Welcome to, give me volume there, buddy. Hello? Christian, unmute me. Am I muted? No? Really? Oh, okay. Welcome to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Vin Armani. Also on Twitter and Periscope, at Vin Armani is my handle there. And you can also get the stream on Facebook at facebook.com/activistpost. That is the Facebook page of our content partner, Activist Post. So it's Monday, again, 10 a.m., and we are coming to you live from fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. We've got a great show for you today. Our guest today is Lyn Ulbricht, mother of Ross Ulbricht. If you don't know his story, he is the alleged founder of the Silk Road. We had Lyn on, actually. She was our first guest on the show, so this is kind of awesome to be having her back again. And as well, we have several stories. We've got a vaccine story, which is, I think it's one of the unique vaccination stories. We always talk about, are vaccines safe and effective? But there's a whole other angle in terms of, while vaccines may be a solution for some things, they may create problems for others. And there's a brand new study that we're going to get into that's really very eye-opening. We also have stories about cryptocurrency, and we're going to talk a little bit about nationalism and the situation that happened in France. To help me out with all of that, back after a 2-week hiatus, my good friend, co-host, and producer, Mr. Christian Reyes. Christian.
Thank you, sir.
I am not getting. Can you turn my headphone up because because I'm hearing nothing.
Right.
Now say something to me.
Hey, Vin.
Okay, that's good. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, man. It may just be, as I told you, like I'm under the weather, so I may be a little bit out of it. I spent all of yesterday in bed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, literally all of yesterday. So I'm a little bit out of it. Thank God you're here. I don't know if I could do this on my own.
I'm back.
You're back.
Yeah.
You're back.
Feels good to be back.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Back in the captain's chair, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Doing your thing.
Feels great.
So, dude, I wanted to talk about, when you were gone, I had some stories about this demonetization that's going on with YouTube and Facebook pulling people's videos. Activist Post got their ads pulled from both Google and
It's crazy.
yeah, Google and Amazon pulled ads from them. It's like it's a weird kind of censorship at this point. Like, I guess it turns out that YouTube is actually, they're starting like a commercial, like they're going to start curating shows and doing like YouTube originals, kind of like how Amazon does originals and whatnot. And I guess they're going to have those be ad supported. So I think they're trying to pull their ads, you know what I mean? Because they want to be sure that they can pay for these things. I don't know the entire background, but what was so funny was that we did our show, I believe it was I want to say it was the 14th. It was 14th or 17th. It was with Adam Williams.
Yeah.
Had him on. At the beginning of that show, I talked about all of this demonetization and did a whole story about it. So, like, what was it? Thursday, I get an email from YouTube about that show and about how it's been demonetized. Why don't you pull up this demonetized thing? So I get this email. Hi, Vin Armani. Thanks for submitting your videos for monetization. We didn't approve your videos for monetization because the content in your videos or video details may not be advertiser friendly. If you believe that the content in your video is advertiser friendly, you can request an additional review below. And it's the Vin Armani Show. Oh, it's from the 24th, Adam Williams. It says, please note that review times may vary, and YouTube reserves the right to make the final decision whether to monetize a video. All videos are subject to our terms of service and community guidelines and may be removed from the site if they don't meet those standards. So, something in there is not ad friendly. So let's look at what the ad friendly guidelines are. Go ahead and pump my headphone volume up a little bit more, Christian. There we go. So, here's ad-friendly. Advertiser-friendly content guidelines. Advertiser-friendly content is content that's appropriate for all audiences. It has little to no inappropriate or mature content in the video stream, thumbnail, or metadata, such as in the video title. If the video does contain inappropriate content, the context is usually The context is usually newsworthy or comedic, and the creator's intent is to inform or entertain, not to offend or shock. So we do a news show, so I would think that that's what this is. It says content that may be acceptable for YouTube under YouTube policies may not be appropriate for Google advertising. Google's program policies provide additional guidelines for what can be monetized, and advertisers also have their own standards and requirements for content. Okay, now here's content that is considered inappropriate. Go back to it. Okay, content that is considered not advertiser friendly includes but is not limited to. Now, Christian, we're going to try to figure out which one of these apply to the Vin Armani Show.
Okay.
Sexually suggestive content, including partial nudity and sexual humor. As of yet, partial nudity has not happened. Violence, including display of serious injury and events related to violent extremism. Now, we do have some clips in our opening that are from the news, that are from like war stuff, violent extremism. But I don't know that there's a display of serious injury. Mm-mm. Inappropriate language, including harassment, profanity, and vulgar language. Now, from time to time, we do curse, but we're certainly, I don't think we're being profane or vulgar. No. Right? Certainly not trying to insult anybody. Promotion of drugs and regulated substances, including selling, use, and abuse of such items. Now, we have done an ayahuasca show. That has not been demonetized. The Adam Williams show, was there anything in there about drugs? I really don't think so. Now, here it is. Controversial or sensitive subjects and events, including subjects related to war, political conflicts, natural disasters, and tragedies, even if graphic imagery is not shown. So basically what that says is, even if graphic imagery is not shown, so that means talking about war or political conflicts or natural disasters or tragedies is inappropriate for advertising.
Well, there goes like 75% of the channels on YouTube.
I mean, there goes the actual things that are, those are the things that are of any value.
Yeah.
What, you can't talk about war? You're going to be demonetized if you talk about war? That's so broad. Yeah. And especially as we head into war, it seems very shady. So this Adam Williams thing came. I said, okay, I'm gonna dispute this and see what happens. So here, I told them to review it. You got this after review thing. So then they sent me back, after review, hi Vin Armani. After reviewing your video, we've confirmed that the content in your video or video details aren't advertiser friendly. As a result, your video can't be monetized. This was after their review. So dude, look, again, they're a private company. They can do what they want to do. Mm-hmm. You know, when I did that past video, there were people in the YouTube comments like, oh, why are you complaining? They're a private company, just blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, dude, it's not a complaint. It's not a complaint. But it is to say that they are ubiquitous, right? YouTube is everywhere. Like, it's standard on people's phones. They have really, their platform is the best platform going right now. Yeah. And a lot of platforms have the people who were developing platforms early on, most of that development has stopped because YouTube it has all of the market share. Right. And what it really brings up is it's more just to inform people of the idea that like those people who were relying on YouTube's cash coming in on their monetized videos probably should not be relying on that. For us, it's not a big deal because we've never made enough money for it to make a difference, right? On the YouTube videos. Right. You know, our money is made by actually promoting products within our show that we believe in or that we're a part of, and we're going to do more of that, obviously, as it moves forward. Mm-hmm. But the whole idea of generating money off your YouTube videos is going to be going by the wayside very, very, very soon. Yeah.
I saw something recently about the creators, something about demonetizing the creators studio, or not studio, but I don't know how it works exactly with YouTube, but I saw an article on that, and I think it falls kind of in this category.
No, quite a few different. There was a story that I saw today. This guy who's a ghost hunter or something like that, who not only was he doing it full time, but he had a couple people on his staff and everything just off the YouTube ads, and they basically demonetized him.
Wow.
So, look, this is something that happens as industries change. But I think what people need to think about is these are the exact reasons to be supporting. Certainly, there are some solutions that are coming up on the blockchain where things can't happen,
Yeah.
where there's no centralization. That's really what you need to start supporting. And people who want to be in the content business, people who need to expect that, okay, this YouTube thing there was a very short window where people were able to get paid like that. And look, a lot of the people who are able to do this, it's activists. A lot of it is activists, man. A lot of it is people talking about political issues.
Yep.
You know, you don't like the sort of pootie pies of the world are few and far between compared to this sort of long tail of people talking about issues that people actually care about.
Yep.
But it's very likely that those are going to be.
Well, when you think of YouTube as well, you think of like that's where people go. A lot of people go to learn, you know, and to get informed.
Dude, absolutely.
So,
it's the
YouTube.
new like Library of Alexandria.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's got all that information there. So I don't know. There are a lot of great, like you say, educational and informative channels that if they start talking about war or sensitive subjects, if they start talking about politics, they can get demonetized.
Wow.
So it's very, very crazy. One sensitive subject, we're definitely going to get demonetized today because we're about to get into a sensitive subject today, which is our first news story. We haven't done a vaccine story in a while. And this week, there were two interesting stories that really, I think, really illustrate a lot of the issues that the anti-vaccine people, as they're called, have with the current vaccine regime. You know, the idea that we're giving dozens of vaccines to kids. The first story is about another measles outbreak. This is the measles outbreak story there, sir. It's from the Washington Post. Anti-vaccine activists spark a state's worst measles outbreak in decades. It's interesting headline that the measles outbreak was sparked by anti-vaccine activists. Okay, here's the story. This is from Washington Post. The young mother started getting advice early on from friends in the close-knit Somali immigrant community here. Don't let your children get the vaccine for measles, mumps, and rubella. It causes autism, they said. Suwado Sala listened, and this spring, her 3-year-old boy and 18-month-old girl contracted measles in Minnesota's largest outbreak of the highly infectious and potentially deadly disease in nearly 3 decades. Her daughter, who had a rash, high fever, and cough, was hospitalized for 4 nights and needed intravenous fluids and oxygen. I thought, I'm in America. I thought I'm in a safe place and my kids will never get sick in that disease, says Salah, 26, who has lived in Minnesota for more than a decade. Growing up in Somalia, she had measles as a child. A sister died of the disease at age 3. Salah no longer believes that the MMR vaccine triggers autism, a discredited theory that spread rapidly through the local Somali community, fanned by meetings organized by anti-vaccine groups. The activists repeatedly invited Andrew Wakefield, the founder of the modern anti-vaccine movement, to talk to worried parents. Okay, Christian, so here's what's interesting about this. This measles outbreak was like 40-something people. I think only 3 or 4 of them were vaccinated. So some vaccinated people actually got the measles in this case. Now, the most important thing whenever we're talking about these measles outbreaks is if you get measles in the U.S., you are not going to die.
Right.
You're not going to... First off, measles is basically eradicated in the United States. It's just, it does not pop up. You see it pop up here. It popped up in an immigrant community, the Somali community. They're saying that it was because, you know, oh, well, these people there's a growing anti-vaccine movement in the Somali community. Based on this, that is actually old information. It was the old MMR vaccine that's the subject of the movie Vaxxed, where yes, it did cause autism, but it's a little bit of a different MMR vaccine. But the thing is this, there were some people, even in this outbreak, who were vaccinated, who got measles. That happens in every outbreak.
Yeah.
Every time there's a little measles outbreak, some people who are vaccinated get measles. So the measles vaccine doesn't completely protect you from measles. That's the first thing, right? It's not 100%. Second thing is, you're not going to die from measles if you're in the U.S. And after you have the measles, yes, it's really, it's shitty. But after you have the measles, you can't get it again.
Right.
It's like chicken pox. It's
Yeah.
like all of these things, right? So the last time somebody died from measles was 2015. And I pulled the story on that if you want to play this measles death story.
It's the first known measles-related death in the state of Washington since the 1990s.
We were not able to confirm that it was measles until 2 days ago.
Health officials in Clallam County say a young woman with a weak immune system got the measles during a county outbreak back in the spring, but would not say who or where she got it from. Citing confidentiality, they also could not reveal the details about the woman's identity.
We were not aware of it, though, because she had a very atypical course. She had many problems because of her underlying health issues, and it was not recognized until an autopsy was done after her death that she had measles-related pneumonia.
While we now know the cause of her death, officials don't believe other people are at risk at this time.
Because this case occurred at an early point in time, there's no risk for transmission from the young woman, and so we won't be kind of gearing up as we did during our outbreak.
But people need to check with their local health department if they are not immunized.
Is that it's important for our entire community to be immunized or immune to measles so that we can protect vulnerable people.
Children should get 2 vaccinations. The first should come between 12 and 15 months. The second between 4 and 6 years old. For adults born after 1956, they should have at least 1 vaccination. Some should get 2.
While today's announcement raises concerns for many across the state, there is also a local family that is grieving.
The family, she had a very devoted family, and this family is never going to be the same because of her death.
So she said some very interesting and important things in that little section. First thing that she said, so this death happened in 2015, and it was the first death in the United States in 10 years. The woman who died was already immunocompromised. She was actually so sick, like just in general, that her immune system was so bad that they didn't even figure out that it was measles that killed her until they did an autopsy. So she was immunocompromised. And if you notice that she said, and this is what it's really all about, she said people should get vaccinated because that protects the immunocompromised people. So it's basically saying this small minority of immunocompromised people that other people should get vaccinated in order to protect them. Now, okay. On its face, that sounds okay. On its face, that sounds reasonable. On its face, that sounds compassionate. But there are no solutions, as Thomas Sowell always says. There are no solutions, only trade-offs. So, what is the trade-off of the level of vaccination that we're doing? Anti-vaccine advocates, or at least advocates for choice in vaccine, have been saying for years that there are serious health consequences to vaccinating children. Now, there had not been a study done, but this week, very interesting news. If you want to do this, who is sicker? This is from Children's Medical Safety Research Institute. And the title is Vaccinated versus Unvaccinated. Guess who is sicker? Something is wrong with America's children. They're sick, allergic, asthmatic, anxious, autoimmune, autistic, hyperactive, distracted, and learning disabled. 32 million American children, a full 43% of them, suffer from at least one of 20 chronic illnesses, not including obesity. Across the board, once rare pediatric disorders from autism and ADD to type 1 diabetes and Tourette's syndrome are soaring, though few studies pool the data. Compared to their parents, children today are 4 times more likely to have a chronic illness. And while their grandparents might never have swallowed a pill as children, the current generation of kids is a pharmaceutical sales rep's dream come true. More than 1 million American children under 5 years old takes a psychiatric drug. More than 8.3 million kids under 17 have consumed psychiatric drugs. And in any given month, 1 in 4 is taking at least one prescription drug for something. Fast food, bad genes, too much TV, video games, pesticides, plastics. Name the environmental factor, and it has been implicated in the surge of sickness, although none adequately explain the scale or scope of the epidemic. There's one exposure, however, that has evaded the search, despite that children have received it by direct injection in steadily accumulating doses far beyond anything past generations ever saw. 50 doses of 14 vaccines by age 6. 69 doses of 16 pharmaceutical vaccines containing powerful immune-altering ingredients by age 18. We're assured vaccines are, quote, safe and effective, even though public health officials acknowledge they sometimes have serious side effects, including death, and despite the troubling fact that no long-term study of their effects on overall health has ever been conducted. Remarkably, not a single published study has ever compared vaccinated kids to unvaccinated kids to see who is healthier years after the shots until now. If you want to pop up this study, Christian. A pilot study of 666 homeschooled 6 to 12-year-olds from 4 American states, published on April 27th in the Journal of Translational Sciences, compared 261 unvaccinated children with 405 partially or fully vaccinated children and assessed their overall health based on their mother's reports of vaccinations and physician-diagnosed illnesses. What it found about increases in immune-mediated diseases like allergies and neurodevelopmental diseases, including autism, should make all parents think twice before they ever vaccinate again. Go ahead and throw up this illness. Okay, here are the numbers. Vaccinated children were more than 3 times as likely to be diagnosed on the autism spectrum. Vaccinated children were 30-fold more likely to be diagnosed with allergic rhinitis, which is hay fever, than non-vaccinated children. Vaccinated children were 22-fold more likely to require an allergy medication than unvaccinated children. Vaccinated children had more than quadruple the risk of being diagnosed with a learning disability than unvaccinated children. Vaccinated children were 300% more likely to be diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder than unvaccinated children. Vaccinated children were 340% more likely to have been diagnosed with pneumonia than unvaccinated children. Vaccinated children were 300% more likely to be diagnosed with an ear infection than unvaccinated children. Vaccinated children were 700% more likely to have surgery to insert ear drainage tubes than unvaccinated children. Vaccinated children were 2.5-fold more likely to be diagnosed with any chronic illness than unvaccinated children. So, Christian, this is a really interesting study. It's something that I've thought about. I knew that until now this type of study hadn't been done, but it's something that I thought about quite a bit, is that because we're vaccinating children at an early age,
right,
there's almost no way to tell what that particular child's baseline would be.
Yeah.
So, for instance, the first vaccine that they give is the Hep B vaccine, hepatitis B vaccine, right? Which I've always thought this is the craziest vaccine. They give this like within 24 hours of birth. But hepatitis B can be contracted either only through sex, hypodermic drug use, or from the mother to the baby, right? So if the mother has hepatitis B, she can give it to the baby when it's born. But if they test the mother and she's negative for Hep B, then all that's left is drug use and sex, which a newborn is not, that's not even going to happen, right? So you don't, from that point, like, you don't know what the baseline is, right? Like, you don't know what their baseline of health is. You don't know what their baseline of intelligence is. Like, what if these vaccines knocked off, let's say it shaved off 5 IQ points?
Yeah.
That's huge. Like, in terms of what that's going to do for you in your life, like how much easier things are going to be in your life. Like, but you would never know. Right. There's no way to know because you don't. It's not like you have a baseline and then you're like, now something happened to this kid, because they're pumping the vaccines in before the kid can walk, before they can talk. So you don't know. What if they developmentally push them back 6 months, 7 months, 8 months? You know?
Wow. Yeah, it's very deceptive.
There's no way to know.
Yeah.
There's no way to know. But here we have, you would expect, right? Like, so let's take the opium crisis, right?
Yeah.
This opiate crisis that we're having in the country. It's all starting because of these prescription pain medications, right? People are getting addicted to these prescription pain medications, and then what happens is that they can't afford the prescription pain medications anymore, so then they go out and get heroin, right, to be able to get their fix. But it's creating a whole other, okay, you're trying to eliminate the pain, but the addiction that comes from the cure, right? The illness that is created by the cure is in many ways much more deadly than the illness itself.
Yeah. Sounds right on track for what they do, you know, because even with governmental issues and stuff like that, all they do is create more problems. So that in a sense, they're creating another problem by making it look like a solution.
Well, and look at it like this. So take measles as an example, right? Okay, so your kid's not going to get measles, which they wouldn't have died from anyway. Let's take that, right? They would have been absolutely miserable, right, for like a week.
Yeah.
And then just like chickenpox. Did you have chickenpox as a kid?
Yeah.
I had it too. You're miserable, you know what I mean? But you're never going to get chickenpox again. So you say, okay, where's the trade-off? Like Thomas Sowell always says, right? So where's the trade-off? Would I rather they were miserable for a week or, for instance, had asthma for the rest of their life? Had to have an inhaler for the rest of their life, you know, and that hindered them in all the other things that they were going to do, or stunted their growth or pushed their development back.
Yep.
And you should, with this study saying that, with this study showing in hard numbers, it really should, you really should question, like, what are we giving up? And you're giving it up, you're immunodepressing or suppressing a child so that the child who is already immunosuppressed, who can't take the vaccines, will be protected. Like, not your child, somebody else's child. Because your child was perfectly healthy until they popped the vaccines in them.
Yep. There's some other stuff too that I was researching even before the vaccinations and stuff, with the certificates and stuff like that I found very deceptive.
What are the certificates?
I'll bring the research so we can cover it more. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it was some crazy shit. Like, and then just hearing about the vaccines and doing more research on the vaccines, it all kind of makes sense now, you know?
Well, it's a money game, man.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, it's a money game. There's so much money to be made. Like, you think about that Hep B one is the one that I just keep coming back to because it's just useless. And like, you're slamming a pharmaceutical drug into the veins of a healthy newborn baby. And it's like, you wouldn't give a newborn baby Tylenol.
Exactly.
You feel me?
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't give that newborn baby anything except mother's milk.
Yeah.
And you're slamming a pharmaceutical straight into them?
Jesus.
With a syringe?
Yeah.
That there's no reason for. But you think, imagine every single child born. Like, you're just getting the ka-ching, ka-ching. Yeah. Every child that's born, whoever's the manufacturer of that thing, ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. I mean, ring it.
Yep.
For some useless shit. And if they can pump one useless vaccine into you, because that one's clearly useless. It's clearly, someone could argue about the MMR, someone could argue about the diphtheria, someone could argue about the yellow fever, someone could argue about any of the other ones, right? But you can't argue about the hepatitis B for a newborn baby whose mother doesn't have hepatitis B. You can't argue about that one.
Not at all.
And so if that one is the very first one, for me, all the others become immediately suspect.
Yep.
They become immediately suspect. But here's the study. So it's a trade-off. Like, which do you want? There's this potential.
Wow.
And it's I think the worst part about it is it's not the whole vaccine regime from the pharmaceutical manufacturers and from the governments is not immoral, it's amoral. Like it's anti-moral, right? Because what it's playing on is it's playing on the virtue.
Yeah.
It's making the love that a parent has for their child and the worry that a parent has for their child getting sick, it's taking that and using that to get their child sick.
Yeah, that's crazy shit.
It's so twisted.
It's sick, dude.
Because look, with all those things, you think about it, you vaccinate them, all those things we talked about, then it's more money.
Yep.
ADHD, you get to put them on a medication for that. Allergy shit, you get to put them on a medication
Set
for
up.
that. Like, let's get them chronically sick, and then we've got the cure for the chronic sickness.
Just like what happens with anything government.
That's it. Well, when you allow, and this is a lot of people get this aspect of like when you talk about the free market versus corporatism,
Yeah.
right? In the free market, this could not happen. This can only happen because government and pharma are like this, and the money is like this. But these guys are drug dealers, man.
Yeah.
Like, all they care about is selling you something for
Cashing
you to
in.
take. They don't care about making you healthy. They don't want you to be healthy.
No.
They don't get paid if you're healthy. Healthy people don't need big pharma.
Yeah.
Only sick people need big pharma. So you figure if you're going to give big pharma access to your kids and access to your kids' bloodstream and your kid's perfectly healthy, do they have an incentive? Are they incentivized to keep your kid healthy, or are they incentivized to take that opportunity to get your kid sick so that your kid will need their cure for the rest of their life?
Create more problems so they can act like the solution.
That's it. That's it, man. That is absolutely it. It's sickening, really. It is sickening. Well, moving off of that. Moving off of that onto something that's a little. Well, it also has this one also has some questions, and this one for me is also where three stories that we have today, the thing that combines them all is that I really see a lack of common sense. Like, it makes a lot, what we've said about the vaccines makes a lot of sense. But there are other things in this world, in the sort of liberty scene, right? There are other things that over the past several months I've seen need to be questioned. One of them is cryptocurrency and what's going on with crypto. So, we're having a huge explosion. We've been doing this show for 6 months, and we started from day one saying how important cryptocurrency, in particular Bitcoin, is. Now, as I talk to people about cryptocurrency, and particularly as I talk to people who are fans of Bitcoin, one thing that they just won't stop talking about is the fact that the price keeps going up. So this week we had a real cryptocurrency explosion. Do we have this crypto story here? Cryptocurrency prices explode. Bitcoin at $1,600, Ethereum at $100. This is from financemagnets.com. Almost all cryptocurrencies are way up today, bringing the combined value of the market to $46 billion. Cryptocurrency prices appear to be unstoppable today, with the top 4 blockchain assets now worth over $1 billion each. It seems much of the surge is from new money pouring into the market. This is evident from the exceptionally high trading volumes, reaching a new record total for the entire ecosystem of over $2.2 billion a day. One likely reason for this is that the news of recent all-time highs are drawing in more and more new traders attracted to the opportunity. Bitcoin is now at a record high of $1,600, rising 7% since yesterday. This was from the 5th. giving it a market cap of over $9 billion. Ripple's XRP is now at a record high of 9 cents, rising 40% since yesterday, giving it a market cap of over $3.4 billion. Litecoin is now at a record high of $25, rising 20% since yesterday, giving it a market cap of over $1.3 billion. In fact, most of the other 700-plus blockchain assets traded around the world are up significantly today. In total, the combined value of the entire market is now at a record $46 billion. Okay, but let's talk about this for a second, Christian. Here's the problem. This is something that I have said from the beginning of this whole thing. Look, I am a huge cryptocurrency backer. I believe that it's important for freedom. I know that cryptocurrency, because it's better, faster, one thing it's not is it's not more readily available. But in terms of the markets, it certainly is more readily available, right? But it's better and faster when it's working right. So I know cryptocurrency is going to be the currency within the next 20 years. Like, it's going to be massive, right? The problem is, do you know anywhere? Like, could we go right now and go get lunch after the show and pay in Bitcoin?
No.
No.
No, not yet at least.
No. And for me, that's a problem. When we've got Bitcoin at, look, 3, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, Bitcoin was down under $20, right? If it got up to 20, wow, that's amazing, right? So like 2013, you're talking about $10, $15,
yeah,
right? To me, that's reasonable. That's reasonable, okay? You've got it there, but there's just as many places where you can spend Bitcoin. Now we've got times 100, right? 100 times value. But it's like, there's no fundamentals. Where is that value coming from? Like, where?
Yeah, interesting.
What it is, we're in the middle of a giant bubble.
Yeah.
Like, people, and unfortunately, it's actually making it less likely that we're going to get more development on the Bitcoin blockchain. People are jumping in because they're like, oh yeah, I put my money here and it doubles. But it's, yes, because more people are coming in and putting their money in. Not because there's any value actually being created by the Bitcoin blockchain, because people aren't using the cryptocurrency. And, you know, when I first started, so, you know, I do the little Internet of Things creations. The problem with Bitcoin now is it's so expensive to move money around on the blockchain that you can't do any sort of small transaction.
Right.
When I first started, I could move stuff around without paying any mining fees.
Yeah.
Like, I could do a transaction and not put any mining fees, or put like less than a cent, and it would still confirm. It would go on. Now fees are like at $1.50 for a transaction. So that's what I'm telling people first to coffee. Like, if we went to go and get coffee, you know, a $1.50 coffee, we'd have to pay $1.50 in a mining fee just to move that money. And that's way more than a credit card fee.
Right.
But yet the price is going up. It's a very bad scenario. We're in a very bad place with cryptocurrency. Like, it's going to be fine, but the value is going to just fall off.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that Bitcoin is the, and I've been tweeting it, I believe that Bitcoin in 2017 is the BlackBerry of 2007.
The MySpace.
Yeah, MySpace, BlackBerry. You know, that is, because when I first started developing apps for phones, my first phone app, it was about 2007, maybe 2008. And I was like, okay, what platform should I develop on? First one I developed was on BlackBerry. Because I was like, yeah, this Android thing, there's like one phone that's not even out yet.
Yeah.
And then Palm even came out with a phone, the Palm Pre at one point. People don't even remember this. No. iPhone, like, it was like, iPhone. BlackBerry had like 50% of the market in 2007.
Yeah.
They have exactly 0% now.
Crazy.
And speaking of 50% of the market and how that changes, you have this this market cap thing. It's really interesting. This is Bitcoin versus the altcoins. something to keep an eye on. So this goes out to April 30th. This is from April 28th, 2013 to April 30th, 2017. And as you can see, it says their blocks became full, began causing long confirmation delays and a bad user experience right about here. And you see that Bitcoin, its percentage of the market just fell off. And the other coins, we're talking Litecoin, Ripple, Ethereum, that shot up. But I think that what we're going to see, Christian, is that we're going to see actually Ethereum. Ethereum's the one, it's at like $100. Next week we've got on Matt Carano, who does communications for Swarm City, which is a company that I've been following. They're doing like a decentralized Uber. They're one of they're one of the companies developing on the Ethereum blockchain. Their money is tokens, Ethereum tokens, very similar to the Legends Room when we had Kevin Hobbs on. So the Ethereum blockchain actually does something. You can actually build businesses on top of it. You can run different apps. You can create these D-apps, as they call them, decentralized apps, which is a whole cool new thing, right? Yeah. There's some value there. But Ethereum's only at 100, as versus Bitcoin at 1,500. It's a Ponzi scheme, right? As soon as people stop throwing the money in, the people who are getting, because if it's at 1,500, 1,600, that means people are buying at 1,500 or 1,600. That's crazy. That means people are expecting it to go to what? 20,000? Like, then what?
Yeah.
Then the miner's fees are going to be like $20. It's going to be $20 to send $5.
That's crazy.
I actually saw something the other day that there's something like $4 million worth of wallets that have such a low balance that they can't make a transaction without the entire balance being eaten up by the fee.
Oh, shit.
So it's basically like $4 million in change that basically nobody can do anything with. Because the price is too high. Because the price is too high. It's a very, very strange.
It's very interesting.
Very strange situation. I mean, there's some stuff going on in the mining world. There are people spending so much money. When I was at Anarchapulco, there were all these people trying to sell people on investing in mining, these Bitcoin mining companies. And it's like, for what, dude? Like, for what? Like, it isn't like gold.
Yeah.
It isn't like gold where like you would actually have to have some amount of physical gold, you know?
Right.
If the price was super, super high, like it can go down like 100 millionth. You know, you could deal at that level. Or if the price is super low, you just have a lot. We're in a bad situation. It makes me feel, it makes me feel like cryptocurrency is going to have to take a massive hit. Because when these people lose the money that they're about to lose, and they are about to lose a ton of money, the people who have invested in Bitcoin, they're going to be over cryptocurrency.
Yeah, they're going to.
And they're going to be pissing on it. They're going to be poo-pooing it, even though it's just like, dude, it has nothing to do with cryptocurrency. It has to do with you falling in with irrational exuberance for a bubble. Like the same people who are like gung-ho on real estate when the real estate bubble was happening.
Yeah.
And then lost their shirt and they're like, real estate sucks, so I'll never do. And it's like, dude, no, you bought things when they were way overpriced. That's your bad. That's all your bad. Well, but, you know, everybody is sour grapes when the decision that they made doesn't turn out for them. And I think while plenty of Trump supporters in the U.S. are sour grapes, I think that we are going to actually have some sour grapes in France because they didn't pick the French fried Trump version, Marine Le Pen. Instead, they picked a socialist. We got this news number 3.
See who France's next president will be.
A decisive win for Emmanuel Macron after what had been an anxious wait for his supporters who'd gathered at the Louvre in central Paris. Huge cheers greeted the first projected results.
It's an extraordinary moment. It's exceptional. This will be a fresh start.
I'm so happy because it's really a victory for Europe. It's great.
It's exceptional. He's a young man who will prove himself. He already did so when he was minister, and now he's president. He'll do so once again.
This is what France is, and we're so happy to show this face to the world today.
In a solemn victory speech a short time later, the president-elect said he'd put all his energy into being worthy of the trust of the French people.
I know that a number of you have expressed anger, anxiety and doubt. I have a responsibility to listen to you while protecting the most vulnerable, by showing solidarity, and by fighting against all forms of inequality or discrimination. I will do my utmost to ensure your safety and to guarantee the unity of the nation.
Conceding defeat, far-right candidate Marine Le Pen claimed the result had been historic for the National Front.
The traditional political class that helped Emmanuel Macron get elected has itself been discredited. It's lost all legitimacy of presenting itself as an alternative, nor as a credible opposition. The first round of voting confirmed the major decomposition of the French political system by eliminating the traditional parties. This second round represents a recomposition of politics on a major scale, centering on the division between the patriots and the globalists.
Meanwhile, the celebrations continued at the Louvre. Soon the real work will begin for Mr. Macron as he prepares for legislative elections in June. The official handover of power takes place next weekend.
Yeah, this whole nationalism versus globalism idea that is being pushed by, at least by the nationalist side, and then the globalist side, it's not really global. It's a new sort of egalitarian equity is what they're all about. As you saw Macron talking about protecting the most vulnerable, as though that's something the state has ever done, as though any state has ever worked to protect the most vulnerable. The most vulnerable are always the targets of the state. It's almost you can't Christian jump in on this. I'm so out of it. I'm a little medicine head today. The problem with the nationalism versus globalism debate, or the nationalism versus globalism idea, is that they're both collectivism.
It's the same thing.
They're both collectivism. It's just how wide of a net do you want to cast, right? At the end of the day, how wide of a net do you want to cast? Because the globalists are never about, it's never the idea that there's some global government. They're never fighting for a global government. But what they always are trying to do, the people who are accused of being globalists, like the Hillary Clintons of the world, the Barack Obamas of the world, is that they're always looking for who is the most oppressed, right? Their job is to protect the oppressed. That's how they see it. And sometimes the oppressed is within your country, sometimes the oppressed is outside of your country, but they get to decide who the oppressed is. Yeah. Macron, same sort of situation. The nationalists, though, they have no concrete idea of nation. It's their nation as they see it, right? Which doesn't include the undesirables, who may happen to be within those borders, who may happen to be their next door neighbor. But if you're an undesirable, not going to happen. Now, we had Trump win and come in, and people say that he was a nationalist. He's clearly shown himself to be a globalist. Yeah. Right? He's clearly shown himself to be an interventionist. Right? To want to enforce and impose the American will all around the world. France, they're not so big on that anymore after their colonial days. But you have this graphic, because really, she got her ass handed to her.
Wow.
She got 34%, but I mean, wow. The dude those two little districts are like, that's her stronghold up there. But yeah, that's a blowout. That's really a blowout. And it's it's a mandate for a greater Europe. You could pop back to us. It's a mandate for a greater Europe. I think that it's a, it's France trying to show that it is not racist, right? That's really what this whole thing is about. It's virtue signaling.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yep.
It's virtue signaling. It's people, it's not that there's any, like you heard the people talking in the crowd, like it's not that there's any concrete thing that they think Macron does. Just like there was never anything concrete that people thought Hillary Clinton was. Like he asked, what's Hillary Clinton's policy on anything? But she's not Trump. And this whole thing was she's not Le Pen. Le Pen is a complete racist.
Wow. Yeah, when you start to pull away from right-left, you start to see some crazy shit.
Well, right-left is over. I mean, these were two brand new parties. That was the interesting thing about this election. That was the most interesting thing, right? It's that, well, Le Pen's party is not new, but it's a sort of an extreme outlying party, right?
Right.
And then Macron had created his own party, right, right before this election. So these were like this was a rewriting of politics, and you could say that Trump basically had created his own party.
Yeah.
You really could.
Yeah.
So the solutions are not there. I think that we're on the last gasp of this whole thing. Like, people are looking for solutions in places that they just simply are not there. It's not in the voting booth. It's not in the voting booth at all, because there's not going to be a difference. As we see, like, you get a Trump and he does the exact same thing. Exact same thing.
Yeah,
or worse. Or worse. So what do we got?
51.
10:51. All right. Why don't you see if you could pull Lyn up?
All right.
See if or just ask her if she's ready, and you could pop back to me, if you would, sir. So we are going to go to break, and then we are going to be back with our guest Lyn Ulbricht, just as sort of a precursor to that, a little bit of a prologue. Lyn was our first guest on the show. We've now gone 28 weeks. I want to thank everybody who has checked us out, who shares the show, who gets in the live show and comments, who comments on the YouTube videos. We really, really appreciate it. It's now over 6 months. Christian and I have been doing this. The response has been great. We thank you guys. We enjoy doing it. And, this monetization thing is not hurting us. We will have some products that we're going to be bringing to you. But, again, the most important thing is to share and comment. If there's things that you would like us to cover, if there's things that you see during the week, please reach out to us. And because we'd love to cover them. We'd love to know the things that you guys have questions about. But did want to thank you all, and also, of course, a huge thank you to Activist Post for curating all of our news, for being a great partner in this whole adventure. I don't know if we could do it without them. Certainly days like yesterday, when I was too messed up and sick to even come in and get the show ready. Had I not had such wonderful show notes prepared by the people at Activist Post, I don't know if I could have even pulled it off. So just a wonderful thank you to them. We're going to go to break, and then we will be back with Lyn Ulbricht. Welcome back to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Vin Armani, also on Twitter and Periscope. At Vin Armani is my handle there. And we are also streaming on the Facebook page of our wonderful content partner, Activist Post. That's facebook.com/Activist Post. Christian, if you want to pop up this Counter Markets, I just want to tell the people before we start our interview that the May issue of Counter Markets newsletter is out. Countermarket's trends and strategies for maximum freedom. This month is really, really cool. My article in there is all about how every business is part of the content business. We also have a great article about which jobs will survive the automation job apocalypse. We have an article about the best small-scale, self-sufficient energy generation systems. And of course, we have our Bitcoin and silver reports in addition to a whole bunch of other content. We're very, very proud of it. This is our, what is this, third or fourth issue, Christian? This is our third issue. Very, very proud of it. We'd love for you to check it out. All you got to do is go to countermarkets.com and you can get your May issue for free. No strings attached. May issue for free. We know you're going to love it, and we know that you're going to want to subscribe. So please give it a check out, something that we are very, very proud of. And, speaking of cryptocurrency, speaking of alternative business, our guest returning back to the show, who was our first guest ever, our guest today is Lyn Ulbricht. Lyn Ulbricht is the mother of Ross Ulbricht, who in 2013 was arrested and charged in federal court for his role in the Silk Road online marketplace. Since his arrest, Lyn has been working to tirelessly defend her son. Oh, do we have her? We lost her. We lost her. She went over. Just jump back to me, and then when we... Oh, here she comes. Here she goes. Oh, there she goes. And be sure to unmute her on channel 3 there. Channel 3. Lyn, do we have you?
Hi. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I'll just reintroduce you. Lyn Ulbricht is the mother of Ross Ulbricht, who in 2013 was arrested and charged in federal court for his role in the Silk Road online marketplace. Since his arrest, Lyn has been working tirelessly to defend her son. In May 2015, Ross, an Eagle Scout with no priors, was sentenced to life in prison. Lyn Ulbricht, welcome back to the Vin Armani Show.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
We ran into each other in Acapulco at Anarchapulco, but I didn't get a chance to see you speak. We're speaking in opposite rooms at the same time. I know that there have been updates on Ross's story since last we had you on, which I know we've had you on actually twice now, but the first time you were our first guest.
I know.
For those people who are not familiar, it's going to be a few if they're watching this show, obviously, but for those few people who are not familiar with Ross's case, could you just give us some background so that people can understand what it is that we're talking about when we talk about the case of Ross Ulbricht?
Sure. Essentially, Ross was not charged with selling drugs himself. He was charged with creating and running a platform, a website, which allowed people to buy and sell pretty much what they wanted to. There were restrictions. What the administration of Silk Road determined created victims, such as there was no child pornography, there were no hitmen, there was no stolen property, that kind of thing. But there were plenty of drugs bought and sold, mostly marijuana. So he was charged with, he was sentenced to double life plus 40 years without parole for all nonviolent charges. No victims came forward at trial to say he had harmed them in any way. Now Ross is appealing this. He's appealing the conviction because there were many, many problems with the trial. I would personally think it's a travesty. And this, of course, a trial that's not proper puts us all in peril. Mm-hmm. And he's also appealing the sentence because this is a draconian, over-the-top sentence, way worse than many murderers, kidnappers, rapists get, and Ross is not a threat to anyone. And so that's kind of an overview of where we stand. We're waiting to hear from the appellate court. It's been about 6 months since oral arguments, and we're hopeful that there will be some relief in some way for Ross.
So there were some questions about when this case was going on, and I know it's come out more and more. There was certainly some impropriety on the part of the government investigators who were sort of going after Ross and trying to establish evidence. I know that Well, maybe I'll let you tell the whole story. But if you could just basically detail some of the questions that arose in terms of the identities of the people who are actually doing things, the FBI having control over certain aspects, and then things that happen with individual FBI agents that really raised some questions as well. If you could go into that just a little bit.
Absolutely. There are 2 federal agents in prison right now for corruption. Karl Mark Force, who was ex-DEA, and Sean Bridges, who was working for the NSA at the time he was investigating Silk Road, and he's also ex-Secret Service. And they, between them, stole over $1 million from people on the site. But in addition, and what's really important is the reason they had their position and were able to infiltrate is because they were crypto, computer experts. They were technologically very advanced. They had the ability to do pretty much what they wanted on the site, and that includes commandeering accounts, acting as DPR and other aliases, changing, deleting, or planting chats on the marketplace or the forum. They had access to bank accounts, keys. They could change passwords, PIN numbers. I mean, they basically, as one journalist said, had the keys to the kingdom. And this doesn't come out as much as the stealing, but I think it's very important because of the evidence that was shown to the jury was evidence they had access to. So they're now in prison, serving a fraction of what Ross is sentenced with, 6 and 7 years, I believe. And since then, just this past November, Ross's defense team announced that after sifting through the 6 terabytes of discovery evidence, they continued to do it after the trial, it was discovered that it looks like another corrupt agent was involved because there was a hidden folder found with conversations between this agent and DPR about selling information about law enforcement's investigation to DPR. That was entered at trial up to a point, but there's a whole section that was discovered in this folder that was wiped from the evidence. So someone went in who had the access and wiped out this whole part. Then, in addition, a huge part was from August 15th to when Ross was arrested, which is a very key part because the defense was saying that there was another DPR who came in, set Ross up, and was actually running it. That this whole thing was wiped. So that there's nothing from August 15th on, even though there are records of payments to this law enforcement official. And in addition, during that same discovery showed and proves that someone using the DPR account logged into the forum 7 weeks after Ross was arrested. So someone, DPR, or acting as DPR, went into the Silk Road after Ross was already in prison. Now, neither of these things were at the trial because it was discovered post-trial. The really shocking thing to me about the corrupt agents, and look, yeah, it's bad. They were corrupt agents. They stole. They could have tampered with evidence. Is that the jury didn't know they existed. They were not permitted to know they existed. It was kept from the jury to know that these 2 agents, and now we think a third, but these 2 agents had run of the site. And, the defense argued, look, this isn't a fair trial. We ought to be able to put forward everything to the jury. And of course, that's part of the Brady rule, which says that you cannot hide exculpatory evidence in favor of a defendant. It's wrong. And the prosecutor said, well, but wait, if we bring it up at court, then our investigation into these people will be, jeopardized. And it turned out they already knew they were being investigated. It turned out they had been interviewed by law enforcement a couple of months before. But in any case, the defense said, okay, we'll wait. Let's put trial off. You do your investigation, and then we can talk about it. And the judge said no. And so she upheld the prosecution's argument, and the jury never knew about these corrupt agents. This is a big part of the appeal. This isn't right. You're supposed to be able to tell everything and then have the jury decide.
Well, clearly, if someone is being accused of doing something and then after they're arrested, that whatever that something is continues, I think that's some of the most exculpatory evidence that could possibly, when it's like, no, we actually know, we as the state actually know where this individual is. This individual is in our custody, so this individual could not have been online, could not have been doing these things.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's huge. So can you, before we get to the appeal, it is such a, as you say, draconian sentence. I think for a lot of people, it's mind blowing that that something like this could even happen. What was the judge's rationale in allowing this sort of sentence to even take place? What was it that the judge said deserved this sort of behavior from the court?
Yeah, she justified her barbaric sentence in several ways. One is she kept referring to what was alleged to be Ross planning murders for hire. I want to be clear because there's a lot of talk about this. This was never brought to trial. He was never charged with it at trial. It was never proven. And there is an indictment in Maryland which has never been prosecuted. It's been sitting there for over 3 years and is based on one of the corrupt agents' material. So it's pretty flimsy, and yet they used this murder for hire, Ross is dangerous narrative to deprive him of bail, to prejudice the jury because they were allowed to say, well, he's not charged with it, but we say he did it, which I'm like, really? I didn't know you could even do that. And then to bolster this horrible sentence. It's part of the appeal, and even a former federal judge, Nancy Gertner, came out saying, this is wrong. You don't take uncharged allegations and use them to bolster a sentence. And the other people, Drug Policy Alliance, LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and Just Leadership USA, all joined that appeal, saying that part of the appeal. EFF and National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers argued another part of the appeal, supported it. But they said this sentence, you don't base a life sentence on something that's never even gone to trial.
Right.
That's crazy. That was one thing. The other thing is that she made it political. And at first, people go, oh, he's a political prisoner. I thought, well, maybe that's exaggerating. Maybe, but no, he is a political prisoner. I'm convinced. The other Silk Road defendants got a fraction of what Ross got, and they actually are convicted of actually selling drugs. And I'm talking about a lot of drugs. The biggest drug dealer on Silk Road got 10 years. The biggest cocaine and heroin dealer got 5. One of the biggest meth dealers recently got 3. And as I mentioned, the agents got 6 and 7. The person that was running Silk Road 2.0 got 8. These are, and Peter Nash, who was an admin at the height of Silk Road, he got time served and he's free. And I'm glad Peter's free. But my point is, I'm not saying that their sentences are wrong. I'm just saying this is a grotesque disparity between what they got and what Ross got, and I believe the reason is political. I don't think it was about drugs at all. That's proven by these sentences. I think that it was about Bitcoin. Chuck Schumer was he may still be, but he was on the Senate Finance Committee at the time, and I believe they were very alarmed about an alternative currency out of their control. And I also think it has to do with Tor. They came out in papers in Ross's case and some of the motions saying anyone who uses Tor has criminal intent. So I believe those were things that were threatening, and that's why they went after him so hard. And they said, I believe it was the prosecutor, they said, or maybe it was the judge. I get them confused, but I don't know if there's a huge difference. You are the first to use the internet in this way, and for that you must pay. You must be the head on the spike of the medieval castle where people look up and go, that's what's going to happen to you if you do this. Meanwhile, there's bigger and less ethical and many, many more darknet sites now. It didn't work to deter anyone. But she also said, you started this site for philosophical reasons, and I'm not sure you've given up that philosophy. And I'm thinking, so, because you're not sure he's given up a philosophy of basically free markets, voluntarism, and free decisions for people to make themselves, that he deserves to die in a cage.
Well, this
is
why
a violation of the First Amendment.
I mean, this is why I've often said that Ross is very much our Nelson Mandela. That
Absolutely.
he really is. I mean, he represents culturally at the moment at which there's going to come a moment, and I think it's going to come soon, and I hope that it comes soon. But there's going to come a moment, and certainly on the drug side of this, there's going to come a moment when we're going to look and just culturally it's not going to make sense for Ross to still be in prison. I mean, when it's small amounts of marijuana that was most of what was happening, and I'm sitting here in a state where recreational marijuana is now legal, and that's happened since this time,
Right.
where I'm sitting at a point when, we just did a story on Bitcoin today when it's like tons of people are involved in cryptocurrency. The market capitalization on it is in the billions of dollars at this point. Tons of normal people are involved in cryptocurrency. And so the idea that I know that some of the dispensaries here are going to end up taking Bitcoin. And it just seems very ridiculous to me that here I can go and buy, some weed down the street in the state of Nevada with some Bitcoin, and then here's this guy who is, and I mean, it's not even that they're not even saying that he was selling drugs. No. Which is the craziest part to me, that it's like, they're not even saying he was selling drugs. They're just saying, oh no, you had a website that enabled this to happen.
Mm-hmm. It's the platform, not the product. And just to quickly address the small amounts of marijuana,
yes.
The Silk Road changed dramatically, coincidentally around the same time that the agents got involved. Now I don't know, I can't prove anything, but I think it's interesting timing. And then there were more big drug deals and different kinds of tone to the site. And in fact, I just recently had a message from someone who was very high up in the Silk Road administration, message me and say, I'm sure there were more than one DPR. I'm sure there was a change. And so were most vendors. And there's lots of anecdotal evidence backing up this proof that was discovered after the trial that I mentioned. And there's all kinds of anecdotal evidence. And then there was also something in the trial itself that was, again, shot down by the judge, where Inigo, who was a high-level admin, and DPR, Inigo told the prosecutors this is in evidence, and said, well, in order to determine that it really was the same person using the DPR handle, because everyone knew that it was different people, they had a prompt so that the next time they could talk to each other, they could confirm. And the next time he did it, DPR didn't know the prompt. Now, that little bit was not permitted to be known to the jury. It was very managed. The narrative was extremely controlled. And this is just plain un-American. It just is. This is a very big threat to all of us. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, all his convictions are nonviolent. Ross is a threat to no one. And the mandatory minimum of what he's convicted of right now is 20 years. And does she really think in 20 years, when he hasn't been on the internet in 25 years at this point, he's going to be a threat, that he's going to come out and create another threatening website? It's purely punitive, and it goes against the Sentencing Reform Act, or Sentencing Decency Act, excuse me, I think that's the name, where it says it should be sufficient sentences but no longer than necessary.
Let's talk about, you mentioned narratives being controlled. There's recently the narrative, which is clearly the state's narrative, seems to be being pushed by people who are not the state. This new, is it a book that you had?
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about this, because I'm curious to get about what is being said about Ross, and I'm also curious what you think the motivations of individuals are to tell the state's story when clearly that's not the whole story.
Well, first of all, I was told by someone who I believe, they've never told me wrong yet, and they were kind of on the inside of things, that this author was fed government material that whitewashed their whole part in it a year before trial. I'm not sure if this is legal even, but and I can't prove it, but I believe it. I was also warned by the same person because the author approached me, and I feel like he used very devious, kind of trying to get to my sympathy reasons and how he really knew that Ross was such a good person, because everyone he interviewed, no one said that they disliked Ross. They all said what a kind, compassionate person he is. And he was doing his best to convince me to be involved in the book, and implied that he would, represent Ross fairly. Luckily, I was warned by the same person who told me that he got fed government information, that he was not my friend, that it was going to be a regurgitation of the government narrative. And what it is a fictionalized, it's like tells the story as if it's true in a fictionalized style, but it's Ross. And of course, poor Ross, he's sitting in a cage. He can't defend himself. He's extremely frustrated. And I think the motivation is a career move. I mean, it could potentially be a movie, but it's very shallow. It doesn't even mention that the case is under appeal. I don't think it addresses the corrupt agent's ability to change things or anything. I haven't read it, to be fair, but this is what I'm told. I highly doubt that it talks about any possibility of a second DBR, because this author has come out. First of all, he said he thinks Ross deserves life, which I think shows his bias. And he also, I've got my mind blank, I'm sorry. Yeah, anyway, I'll think of it. But,
it seems very, I mean, the thing about when I saw a little bit about this, what upset me was that the actual story, the story that you and I are describing now, what you're telling us is I think much more interesting.
Oh, it is.
By far. And so if someone was trying to put down a narrative that was going to, even if it's just to sell more books, one would think that the narrative that they would want to discuss would be the one that we're discussing now. Because that other narrative it's already been blown apart. It seems clearly
it's a really old news. It's very old, yeah.
And so it really, and I also don't know, like I say, culturally, it seems to me that the culture is very far away from the ideas that let's just say a lot has changed in even the last 4 years. You know what I mean? A lot has changed in terms of how the country is looking at drugs, how the country is looking at cryptocurrency, how the country is looking at online privacy. Like, all of these things are becoming much, much more important, and people are, especially when it comes to the legalization of narcotics, like, I think that people are opening up to that so much more. So it seems someone would really be going against the grain which is why I'm surprised, like, that's to put this narrative out that seems like it could be so easily dismissed, especially with what you guys have going on in the appeal.
Yeah, well, the other thing I forgot to say is that he's come out publicly and said he believes that Ross is the one and only DPR. Meanwhile, there's proof that he wasn't. But in any case, I was told by someone in that whole world, he said, look, this is mainstream media now, you have to understand. It's all mainstream. And they want a simple, formulaic story. Good boy gone bad, turns into kingpin, gets put away for life. We won't even mention the appeal or the arguments in there. Boom, done. And it's, I do agree with you that people are becoming much more aware of the government's intrusion and many other things. But this is entertainment, basically. And it's Silk Road, and the whole thing is very complicated. And there's also a lot of unanswered questions. He wraps it up with a nice little bow. But it's very misleading, and there's many distortions and flat out misstatements and all kinds of things in it. And I haven't even read the book; I just read excerpts. But I agree with you; it's a much more interesting story if you really get into it. But it would take a lot of work. It would take a lot of, and also I think a lot of the media doesn't like to go up against the government.
Right.
I've been told that. I've been told they want access. And I almost see mainstream media and the government as hand in glove a lot of the time. And and then the other mainstream journalists who are reviewing the book just they don't even ask him these hard questions. They're just like, well, they either print excerpts or they're telling it like he tells it, as if it's true. It's kind of frightening that the media, so much of it is so shallow and basically, frankly, lazy and just echo each other. And, I'm not the only one who says this, but I've experienced it myself. And I'm not saying everybody, but it's disturbing.
So we've talked about in the appeal, you guys are bringing up the corrupt agents. You're bringing up the sentencing being far too much. Was there anything in addition that we missed on this appeal? What else?
There's a very important point.
Okay.
The search and seizure of the laptop, Facebook and Gmail accounts of Ross were made with general warrants, which are unconstitutional. And National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers and Electronic Frontier Foundation joined the appeal on this point and said, yes, they're unconstitutional because they lack particularity, and that's a requirement of the Fourth Amendment. That's one of the reasons we fought the American Revolution. It's a big reason they wrote the Fourth Amendment, because it keeps the government from getting into your house and rummaging from attic to basement to see what they can find. They have to have a particular thing that they have a warrant for. Now, in this case, they didn't. They seized the laptop, and their argument is, well, we seized the laptop and it's digital, so it doesn't count that it's not papers like they talk about in the Fourth Amendment. But if it were a physical file cabinet with physical files in it, it would be clearly unconstitutional, no question. But because it's digital, they're saying it's not protected. Now, this is an enormous question for the digital age, because unless we keep our material in physical folders, in physical paper, in a physical file cabinet, they are saying that the Fourth Amendment does not protect our privacy.
So the idea is that they're saying that they could have a warrant for the laptop, and then anything that they find on the laptop is fair game, basically. That they can rummage through everything on. But that really puts pretty much every person into a very precarious situation with that sort of a precedent, because then all you got to say is, oh yeah, they're computers, laptops, phones, and tablets. And then that's now in the digital age, that's everything. People don't have papers in the way that it was written in the Fourth Amendment anymore.
I know the founding fathers forgot that part, apparently. I mean, they're twisting this, and yes, it's a very, very important issue. And it's not only what's actually on the laptop, but Cindy Cohn pointed out, she's the head of EFF, that it's what's connected on the laptop.
Meaning what? Expand on that a little bit.
Like your medical history or it doesn't have to be a physical folder on your laptop, because then you can link to your history, your browsing history, all that stuff, So it's like a file cabinet on steroids.
Right.
It's not just like a file cabinet, it's worse. And so basically they're saying we can search Ross's digital house from attic to basement, rummaging around, fishing expedition, because it's not physical material. And so, yeah, huge, huge deal. And this is being argued in the courts. This is, because really the courts now are grappling with the fact that we're being propelled into the digital age in the 21st century, and they're trying to adapt old law to these questions. And it's happening right now. We're at a really pivotal time in history, and the Silk Road case is one of those cases that is going to be setting precedent. It already has set precedent at the trial level for use of digital evidence at a trial, because almost all of the evidence the government used was digital. No witness came forward and said, I saw Ross Ulbricht do this, this, and this. I know he did. He told me this. Nothing. It's all digital, and they're linking anonymous identities with Ross. And I've been told by more than one crypto expert that it's child's play to go into a laptop and change things remotely. They can even do it from a drone, apparently. That it's nothing to tamper with, and as we know, the agents have the ability with digital evidence, and then it's put up on a screen. The jury's told this is real, and they're reading this, and It could have been completely fabricated. The whole chat with DPR and Carl Force about murder for hire, Carl Force could have written the whole thing.
Sure.
I've been told that by many people. It's not like, and we don't even know who DPR was then. There's no proof of that. And so you can see the implications of the government being able to fabricate. All they need is a computer and maybe Photoshop if they want to get fancy. And meanwhile, a bank won't take a screenshot of a mortgage statement. A mortgage company won't take a screenshot of a bank statement.
Right.
Because they know how easily faked it is. But Catherine Forrest Court had a lower standard of proof than a mortgage company.
Well, and
she took screenshots.
And you have these agents. It's not like these agents are clean. I mean, you've got agents in jail. Like that's it's like I think at that point, just in terms of reasonable doubt, I mean that's enough. It's like, yo, these guys were committing crimes. We know they committed crimes. They're in jail for the crimes that they committed. I think that immediately makes them suspect of doing all of these other things. That's
right. And Sean Bridges has a history of framing people. That's something that I read about him. And absolutely, it does. And they had a motive to do it because they were covering their own tracks.
Right.
And but the thing is, again, the jury didn't know about the reasonable doubt because they weren't allowed to know these agents existed. And even the defense didn't know that Sean Bridges existed at all until after the trial. The government knew. They had had all of it for quite a while. This is how our justice system is manipulated and controlled. So then there's lots more. I mean, there's things that were allowed and not allowed to be said at trial. For instance, Ross's libertarian views were not allowed to be mentioned at trial. The fact that there were legal things sold on Silk Road or other things besides drugs, not allowed to be mentioned at trial.
Really?
I mean, the jury got a very controlled narrative, and it all fit the government's picture of Ross as this kingpin thug who just cared about money and drugs and, was willing to do whatever it took to control his empire. Now, if you knew Ross, and there's 100 letters on our website from people who do know Ross, unlike this author, and even the author said, I didn't run into anybody who said anything bad to say about him. These letters show who Ross really is. And he is a exceptionally good, caring, compassionate, peaceful person who's no history of violence, no history of hurting anyone. And, it's totally antithetical to the government's portrait of him and to this book, but that is the government's portrait, is the book. I feel like because the government couldn't charge him at trial for murder for hire, they're having Nick Bilton do it for them. That's what I think is happening.
I think it's very important for people, especially for people who are libertarians or who are freedom-minded people, with the way that things are going. One of the things that I find so important about Ross's case is that, as you say, this was a shot across the bow in many ways for how are we going to attack this libertarian movement? How are we going to attack these people who think in this way? I think that anybody who is part of the liberty movement or has libertarian views is really doing themselves a great disservice if they don't constantly speak up on behalf of Ross, because it could very easily be any one of us. I mean, the fact that there were money laundering charges associated with this that were just because of the use of cryptocurrency should give everybody pause. The people who are running around so eager to buy Bitcoin, it should give you pause that if you're not going to fight against the money laundering charges of Ross Ulbricht, which come from Bitcoin, you may very well be next. All you have to do is just run afoul of the law in some way.
Absolutely. These things are important. I mean, they're saying that he, basically they're charging you with hacking, but they never said he hacked anything. He just said, they just said someone else sold hacking software on Silk Road, so he gets charged with hacking. Now, and that's one of the charges as part of the 40 years. Now, if that's true, does Jeff Bezos get hauled into court because a young girl who bought cyanide on Amazon is suing him because her daughter committed suicide with it?
Right.
is eBay. I mean, is Craigslist. Oh my gosh. What about Facebook Live, where there's murders going on Facebook?
Right.
So it's like, this is a slippery slope to say that a website host is responsible for what other people do. And, you know, that's another very important precedent where you're making one person responsible for the actions of another. And yeah, it's definitely something to be considered very seriously.
So
as law is made.
So what are the things that people can do now to what do you need help with on the Free Ross side? What are the things that people can get involved in? How can they help?
Well, of course, it's so expensive to fight the federal government. That's one of the things that's so unjust in this country. It's like if you don't have millions of dollars, it's very difficult. They crush you that way. So we're doing it, and I'm not going to give up, and neither is my family, but we're not rich either. And so we always need help with that. It's been a real grassroots movement. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. We've had, a lot of very small donations, but it adds up. There's ways to help and have fun. Like there's an art game on the site, our website, freeross.org, where for $1 you can help reveal a piece of artwork that Ross drew in prison and send him a message. If you buy on Amazon through our site, we get a little back from that. So different ways. Also, it's not just about money. It's, volunteering, helping with the effort. It's going on social media and promoting us, retweeting and sharing, and also answering. So, go to the website, and there's arguments against a lot of what's being put out there, like this book, where you can answer, because I'm just one person, and with help like you, Vin, but, if we get enough people not buying this government narrative, which is what it is, if it weren't, they would have charged him at trial. They're not shy about bringing charges to people. They even charged him with fake IDs, So, I mean, that's how they're scraping to pile it on. No murder for hire charges. There is an indictment in Maryland, never been prosecuted, just sitting there for 3.5 years now. So it's like, they're not doing it for a reason. And that should cast doubt on this entire book and all of these allegations.
So what's the timetable now on the appeal? When is the next phase, or when is the next info that you expect to come out date-wise?
Well, it could be any day. It's been 6 months since oral arguments, and after that you wait. And the court deliberates and comes back. We're told that when it takes a while, it's can be, not necessarily guaranteed, but can be a sign of some relief, because they're thinking about it, they're working it through. It's not just a quick decision. So actually, it's a good thing, probably, hopefully. And you just wait, and then you hear. You don't get any warning. There's 3 things that potentially, I believe this is correct, 3 possible outcomes of their judgment. One would be nothing, that they say everything's fine just the way it is. Hopefully that won't be true, but if it is, we will appeal that. They can say, well, the convictions stand, but the sentence is wrong. Just a couple of weeks ago, another judge in that same circuit reversed a sentence that was draconian. So that was very good, that same circuit said, no, this is too much. So we're hoping that they will think so too. And so then what happens is we would have a resentencing. We've asked for a different judge for obvious reasons. And doesn't mean you can't appeal the convictions too, from what I understand. Or they could say, this trial has a lot of problems. It wasn't fair for this because of the corrupt agents being precluded, or because the laptop was, unconstitutionally seized, and we're going to do a new trial, or and without the laptop, or with the agents. And actually, the same circuit reversed the same judge on that general warrants issue. It was a civil case, but it was the same principle, that they didn't have the proper warrant. It was a general warrant. So I'm hoping that'll happen. So there's all kinds of different things, and then the government can appeal what they say, and I mean, it gets dragged out. But we're determined to take it. We're determined to get Ross out. Ross is not doing anyone any good in there. I mean, he's helping fellow inmates. Let me, amend that. But he can do a lot more good for his community and just society. And he doesn't deserve to be there. Even a guard told him, he said, you shouldn't be in here. I read about, this is, because people get to know Ross. And in fact, like I said, there's 100 letters, 4 of them from fellow inmates about how much he's helped them and just what a, good, generous person he is. He doesn't need to be in prison. Many people don't, by the way. He's not unique. There's 3,000 nonviolent offenders who have life right now, according to ACLU. I mean, the life sentences since the drug war has absolutely spiked, and actually prison populations have spiked. The drug war has been an abomination, and as a war, Ross is a prisoner of war, of that drug war. And you're absolutely right. He's like actually Carla Garrick, who was raised in South Africa, said she considers him Nelson Mandela too, and that we really need people to understand this and how he's being smeared and unjustly treated.
Well, Lyn Ulbricht, we are pulling for you. We will have you back on when there are, hopefully, if you're available, when there are more updates on Ross. But we absolutely, like I say, his cause is a big one for us, and so we thank you very, very much for being on. And everybody, please go freeross.org, go on Twitter, free_Ross, follow Lyn, keep up with what's going on. It's very, very, very important. So, Lyn Ulbricht, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll see you again soon. All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Christian, always rough. That is a tough story, man.
Yeah, that's.
It is heartbreaking. Yeah. The crazy thing is, I totally can see, the weirdest thing is I totally can see myself in that whole situation. Like, here's somebody who really believes that he's doing something good. And I think for a lot of people, is doing something good. I think the majority of people would see it as doing so. Look, the majority of people, at least in Nevada, California, Colorado, Alaska, Hawaii, Oregon, Washington, you know what I mean? All of the places where they've said, yeah, we want to legalize.
Yeah.
We want to legalize marijuana, and I don't think marijuana will be the last one. But here's somebody who is just ahead of the curve culturally, sets something up, people voluntarily interacting with each other, out of his own libertarian views, and you're so dangerous that we need to put you in a cage.
Yeah, that's crazy.
For the rest of your life.
One good point that she brought up too was the recent incidents on Facebook.
Oh, the Facebook Live. Yeah.
So it's the same kind of scenario. Why wouldn't they do that with Zuckerberg? Or, it's just
because those guys have power.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of like, the whole thing seems crazy, but that kind of debunks the whole thing too. It's like, okay, this is totally wrong,
Well, they want to make an example, but it's like, what a shit example to make.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're not, because you're like, why don't you make an example of somebody who's doing something, who's a bad person?
Yeah, exactly.
It feels so much like a power trip on the part of the judge, on the part of the prosecutor, that they figure like, oh, well, this is a high profile case, and by prosecuting this or doing this, it's going to be good for my career and everybody can get behind. No. Everybody can't get behind you prosecuting somebody for this.
Yep.
But I do think, like, he's definitely the liberty movement's Nelson Mandela, but I do not think he's going to be in jail for the length of time that Nelson Mandela was in jail. I really do think, I'm really hopeful, and I do think that society and our culture is coming around. And I just think, look, cryptocurrency and drugs in general, these are going to be mainstreamed.
Yeah.
The idea that you're going to have somebody who's not even being convicted of selling drugs.
Mm-hmm.
That's the crazy part. Not even convicted of selling drugs.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, the thought that the state had at that time, and it's crazy because it's so short, right? It's like 2013 he's arrested to now. But the thought that the state had at that time, like, ooh, yeah, if we crack down, like this sort of decentralized, untrackable, unregulatable, this industry will go away if we just crack down, and you look, it's growing even more.
Yeah.
It's getting to a point where, like, you can't, now nobody's going to be able to get around it. Like the decentralized, which I can't wait till next week to talk about these decentralized apps, because I think that's going to blow a lot of people's mind with our guest, Matt Carano, next week, Swarm City. I'm fading fast, dude. We may have to end the show early.
All right.
Because I'm still a little bit under the weather. Did you have any final?
No,
Final thoughts?
that's it. Yeah, that's always a mind bender to hear Lyn's side of it and to hear all that stuff. And
well, hopefully this goes well. Like she said, it's good that it's long, and it seems so straightforward. I mean, the fact those agents, man, the fact that they're sitting in jail, it's like,
yeah, it's crazy.
Jesus. All right, well, let me say goodbye to people. Thank you very much for today.
Thank you, Vin.
Well, thank you for sticking in with me. As I say, I'm feeling a little bit ill, but you know what? The show must go on. I wasn't going to sit home today because we had some great information to give to you. I want to thank our guest, Lyn Ulbricht, for coming on the show and for sharing her story and for sharing Ross's story. And I want to thank her for doing what she's doing. She's as important a person to this movement as anybody. And not only does Ross, I know, appreciate what she does, but the rest of us do as well, because there may come a time when it's our freedom that's on the line. And it's good to know that there are people out there who are willing to fight for what's right. So I want to thank Lyn, and of course, thank Christian. You can get this episode of the show on iTunes and Stitcher as a podcast. If you'd like to watch the archive, you can do that at youtube.com/Vin Armani. And if you want to watch our segments, kind of the best of segments, you could do that on the YouTube page of Activist Post. That's youtube.com/Activist Post. So we will be back next week. I will be feeling much more chipper at 10 a.m. Pacific time next Monday. Until then, stay free.